Welcome back to Business, Bourbon, and Cigars. This is the podcast where we uncork the secrets to success with industry trailblazers. I'm your host, Scott Joseph, and I am thrilled to have you join us for today's episode, where we're going to be diving deep into the art of building social authority, even if you have a small audience. Our guest today is Ina Coveney. She's a business coach. She also hosts her own podcast, Get Clients First. Love that name. Ina specializes in helping entrepreneurs, C-suite executives, industry innovators get clients even if they have a small social media following. So using the strategies that we're going to explore today, she created literally a proven process on social media that generated a six-figure income. Here's the impressive part. Before reaching 1,000 followers on any of her social media platforms. So we all think we got to have this huge audience. She has proven otherwise. And today she's going to share those insights and those tips so you can turn a small following into a powerhouse presence. Ina, welcome to Business, Bourbon, and Cigars.
That was an amazing introduction. I want to hear this interview. I'm like, that is great. She did what? Yes, I want to dive in. I want to tell you everything. I want to tell you all the things. So thank you so much for having me, Scott. Really happy to be here.
Well, when we first met, it was in person down in Orlando at a business event. And it was a similar topic you were teaching. And I thought, I'm going to watch this because, for one, you know, everyone's got their own definition of what a small audience is. So I feel like I have a small audience. My largest audience would probably be LinkedIn, which is, I think they cap me at 30,000, where I can connect. It goes over that on the followers, but let's just say 30,000. I think right at 10 on Instagram, Facebook, couple channels there, so it's like 5 each maybe, and then Twitter literally like 100. So or X. When you compare, I think of that as small because if influencers today are a couple 100,000, millions, whatever it might be, right? So I thought, I'm going to learn what her techniques are. I want to see this workshop because not only can it help me, but I think, I'm thinking, man, she'd be a good guest on my show because I think most people are in that boat of a small audience. So To me, it made perfect sense.
What is so funny to me is that some people are listening to you say 30,000 people on LinkedIn and I think like 10,000 on Instagram and who knows how many on your mailing list. And people are going, holy cow, that's what a small audience is? That sounds pretty big to me, right? So I think that's like point number one. Is that you never feel like your audience is big enough, right? There are people out there who are like, if I could just max out my LinkedIn, right? Like then I'll be golden, right? Here's Scott saying, I max out my LinkedIn and I still feel like I have a small audience. And the reason you feel that way is because we're seeing all of these influencers have, millions of followers that have hundreds of thousands of followers. So you're like, unless I'm there, I don't really have a big audience. What you don't know is that those big influencers are gathering among each other and they're complaining about the fact that they're not getting enough engagement or that their 600,000 person audience hasn't grown in a year. They are also complaining about their audience. So there isn't going to come a point where you're going to feel like, oh, this talk is not for me anymore because I got a big audience. I'm all set. We're all on the same boat of trying to get clients from our audiences, no matter how big or small they are. So everything we're going to be talking about today, I just kind of need you to understand because I get this question a lot. It's like, what do you consider to be a small audience? And I usually have my canned answer, like, a small audience is 1,000 or fewer followers. But the reality is that I have had clients with 17,000 followers who come to me and they're like, they're not buying, they're not engaging. I'm feeling like I have a small audience, even though I technically don't. So it has nothing to do with the size of the audience. It has everything to do with how you're using and building your social authority to actually attract those clients. Does that make sense?
Perfect sense. At what point, what clicked in your brain early on? Like, walk us through that journey to where you said, enough of this. Here's the direction I'm going. And then what made you then want to go ahead and teach that to everyone else?
I'm going to tell you, there was a point in my journey where I got really angry when I realized this that we're going to be talking about today. I got so mad. I was mad at myself. I was mad at the world. I was mad at the coaches I'd been following and everybody who has a big, I was mad. I got angry to the point of sending an email to my audience and telling them like, I am done playing by stupid rules. Like I am just done, because this is kind of how the evolution happened, right? I start my business. I was on maternity leave from my second baby. Now that second baby is 6.5 years old, right? So 6.5 years ago, I'm on maternity leave and I get screwed over at work, like some of us get to be. And I just decided, that's it. I'm quitting. At that point, I had already been making a little bit of money making websites on the side for a few years. I had a side hustle making websites. And I told my husband, that's it. I don't need to go back. I'm just going to really start this business. And my mentality was the same as everybody's. I need to grow the audience because I need to have people to sell to, right? Like, but I can't just go and sell to zero. So I need to grow my audience. So that's where my mind was going. And that's where my money went. So I was investing in all of these courses and programs and influencers who had a big audience, and like to learn, okay, tell me what I need to do to grow my audience, right? Completely missing the point, as you're going to see like in this whole episode, right? Completely missing the point that that's really not a valuable goal just to have a larger audience. You're always going to complain about the size of your audience, always, no matter what. So I kept thinking like, okay, I need to grow the audience, In the meantime, I am here learning about online marketing, learning about how to run a business, how to get clients, how to serve clients, how to scale the business, right? How to go from one-on-ones to group experiences, how to take my zone of genius and all my knowledge and really put it in a course, and how to deliver it at scale. I started learning all those things. So 2 years into my journey, I have not hit 1,000 followers on Instagram yet. I am still like on the struggle bus with social media, and here like just frustrated, continuously buying more and more and more programs. And then somebody was saying like, oh, I'm a 6-figure entrepreneur and stuff. And I'm like, everybody, when you hear, oh, this person is a 6-figure entrepreneur, you immediately assume something of that figure, and people will assume different things. Some people will hear, oh, that person has made 6 figures in their entire life of their business. Some people will hear, oh, that person makes 6 figures in the past month. Oh, that person made 6 figures in the past year. Oh, that person makes 6 figures a year recurringly, right? Like people will hear different things. So once that became like part of my knowledge now, like now I started to pay attention, like that person says they're a 6-figure entrepreneur and they just said that it's actually through the lifetime of their business. Let me do the math. How much money have I made in my business so far? I didn't know that number. At that time, I was very like haphazard with my finances. I have totally turned that around from that moment on, but I didn't really know how much money I had made. So I went and I dove into my PayPal, into my Stripe, and into checks that I had received, and I added it all up. And it was more than $100,000. And that's when I got mad. I got so mad because I'm like, I just made 6 figures in just 2 years without a large audience. And I'm here still dropping all of my money trying to grow the audience. Why am I not taking just business sense, right? Just saying, why don't we invest things that give us an ROI? Why do I keep investing in things that are clearly not doing anything for me? Because I really should be doubling down on how did I make that money? How did I serve those clients? What do they want from me? And double down on that. I got angry. I couldn't believe that's what I had been doing all this time, completely unaware. I fixed things up. I read the book, Profit First. Everybody should be reading that book, by the way. Read the book, Profit First, got reorganized in my finances. I let go of a whole bunch of expenses that I didn't need, and I became profitable by 30% that year. because I made those rules for myself. And that's when I started to realize my own clients were still chasing that viral thing. They were still trying to grow their audience. And I'm like, why don't we just do the things that work to make money, to get clients? And let's forget about the follower count for a second. I'm not saying that it doesn't have room, right? I create reels, right? I engage in activities that, allow me to grow my audience and to expand my breadth of reach. I do that, but it's not where I put my money in. It's not what I rely on to make money. I rely on other techniques I'm sure we're going to be covering today to get clients and to use my social authority to make money in my business.
Well, we have to cover them because that's what we promised everyone. So
let's do it.
So, I think how much of it is, this is not forever. This is not a statement that covers everyone. But when we talk about large audience, how much of that is just ego?
I'm going to say it's not so much ego, because there could be some of it, right? I'm not going to say no. There are people out there who are like, I just want to be a big deal, right? Like, and I will give it to them. If that's your dream, go for it. Who's stopping you? Why not? Just whatever motivation you have, use it. But there's a lot of people on a completely different boat. They just really believe that is the only way to make it online and to make money online. And that's what we're trying to dispel here today.
So talk to me, like, obviously, all right, the biggest misconception, which you've clearly covered, is I need a big audience to get any type of ROI or to make all this effort, because it takes a lot of time, effort, and sometimes money to grow whatever brand you're trying to do, and more importantly, generate leads and business out of social media. So what are the most common misconceptions that people have, I guess, when it comes to social media, or more importantly, in terms of I need to have a big audience?
It's to say that the first thing they need to do is buy Facebook ads.
Yeah.
I made that mistake. Now, I'm not saying that Facebook ads are evil. I have run Facebook ads. I'm still experimenting with Facebook ads, right? There's many businesses doing great with Facebook ads. The problem is when you think that that's a silver bullet, right? When you see other entrepreneurs doing Facebook ads and saying, oh, all I have to do is do that. Let me just study what they're doing and mimic it. You have a completely different audience, completely different niche, completely different experience with your offer, right? Has your offer been proven to the point that it's ready for a mass market, right? You probably don't even know what their cost per conversion is. So you have no idea what your cost per conversion should be. So I made this mistake that in my first year in business, I made that mistake. I hired an agency, $3,000 to go and buy Facebook ads for me. Because I'm like, I need an audience. I need to grow it. I'll hire somebody who already knows how to do it. The huge problem that any agency that is worth their prices, right? Any issue they're going to have with somebody like me that had not proven mass appeal of my brand, mass appeal of my offer, right? That these things did not exist. They're going to have a big issue with running Facebook ads for me, because Facebook has not been trained yet on how to deliver my content. Facebook has no idea what kind of people would like my content, what kind of people would click on my ads. Facebook is a learning tool. It's like a baby when you first start with it. So you can't just say, hey, baby, go and make me money. Right. You got to teach the baby how to walk. You got to teach the baby how to talk. And then the baby will eventually become more advanced. The baby will eventually graduate Harvard and get you $2 per conversion leads that are perfect for your business. But you can't just throw money at the problem. So I would say that is the biggest misconception out there about growing an audience and making money online.
I like that. And so, and just so you're clear, and you mentioned this, there are established businesses that have established audiences, and I'm going to say, for car dealers, right? It makes a lot of sense to run because they've got an established market and but that doesn't mean, and it's not an individual, by the way. So, when you're an established business, right, B2C or retailer, that's a completely different ballgame than what you're talking about. You're talking about the entrepreneurs. You're talking about, you could even be talking about, let's say, the person that runs that store, that retail outlet. They're building their personal brand because in the long run, they believe it will draw more attention to their business but you're not going to do that. There's no reason for that person to run ads, if I'm hearing you right.
No, I'm actually going to take what you just said. Let's take like the automotive entrepreneur,
Yep.
right? This still applies to them. Because if they have never run ads before, or they have been doing it thinking like, I'm just going to mimic what everybody else is doing, or I'm just going to do whatever makes sense and take whatever Facebook gives me. Facebook still is a baby when it comes to their brand, their locale, right? Their regional reach. What kind of people do you have in your community that would engage with your content? What kind of content is going to work? So my point with Facebook ads, and this applies to everybody, businesses, automotive industry, Coca-Cola, okay, this applies to everybody. You gotta let Facebook get trained on your content, on your offer, on your audience, and you gotta give it time. Throwing $50,000 at an ad campaign, if it's the first time that you've run that kind of ad campaign, is going to be like throwing your money down the toilet because you're not going to see the kind of results that you're going to expect. You need to train the Facebook machine on how to sell your stuff. And that doesn't happen in the first campaign. Does that make sense?
Oh, 100%. So I think we were on the same page. I don't always articulate what I want to say well. So what I'm saying is, as a business who's already established those audiences and has been publishing stuff, we can, like, for instance, with our own agency, we can see results right away with that. But if I'm the general manager of that store, I'm not going to be, it doesn't make as much sense for me to do things like that. And it would make more sense to do what you're going to be talking about here, which is establishing real connections and real engagement with the people who either follow or I'm connected with, is what I'm saying. So I think we're saying the same thing.
Okay. So we need to be clear about which topic we are talking about, because it's going to, like, you're going to see, this is kind of part of it. We need to know what our goal is. Yeah. If our goal is to grow the audience, I will talk to you about Facebook ads all day long. And I will talk to you about Reels all day long. Yeah. Right? There are activities that are purely created, and there's a way to make them more efficient to grow the audience. But if we're talking about getting clients, that is a completely different goal. That has a completely different set of tasks associated with it. And Facebook ads is a different thing.
That's right.
So we need to be, and everybody who's listening right now, you need to be very mindful of that many times entrepreneurs go to audience growth strategies thinking that they're engaging in sales strategies, and it is not the same thing. So let's go back to your general manager, right? Who's like, you know what, maybe I'm not ready to do ads yet because I've never run them before. It's going to take me time and money to train the algorithm on it. So what do I do? If I want to have a presence on social media, what are some ways that I can just start creating the social authority? You want to dive into that?
That was going to be my next question. So in other words, how does someone with a small audience establish some type of social authority?
Okay.
Because I could make the argument, okay, I'm out here so I dumped my, what was Twitter account, right? A few years back. It was so negative. I said, I got to get out of here. It's upsetting me.
Lots of people did that. I've heard that multiple times this week.
I couldn't take it. I mean, I was like, it's making me, I'm very big on eliminating what I don't want to go into my, negative stuff, things that impact the energy flow I've got. And so I try to protect my mind, so to speak. So I've restarted that. And, when you're restarting it, there is no other example of a small audience than what I've got on the X platform currently. Right.
Right.
And so, and I'm doing my thing. All right. I'm posting what I need to do. And occasionally I'll see that, oh, wow, 7 people saw it and 20 people saw it. And I'm thinking to myself, this is the biggest waste of time. So how does someone, and whether it's that to that extreme,
Okay.
or let's say take it up to 1,000 people and whatever, how does someone
I'm ready.
establish the authority, the social authority in those type of situations?
Okay. Why don't we do like a 3-part step? And by the way, I hope you write these down because I'm not going to remember them.
Well,
And I don't have them written in front of me. So I'm just let's go like 3-pointer.
So I write everything down when I feel like, oh, I need a good follow-up. I need to make sure I follow up to that with another question. And I used to try and take notes during these shows. And then I realized, so everyone watching or listening should be, right? But then I realized I'm recording them. I have it. Why am I need to focus more on my guest. So,
and you have the transcript too.
Yes.
We can go back to the transcript. Exactly. But I think it's really smart to like write it down for like follow-up questions. I'm a podcaster. I totally get it.
Yeah.
So let's go like 3-parter. Okay. Point number 1, I have a small audience. I want to build authority. Like, what do I do? Well, first of all, I just heard you say, well, there's these 100 people on my Twitter account, and I see that 7 people saw my post, right? Is it a total waste of time, like you said? Well, it depends on who those 100 people are, and it depends on who those 7 people are, right? So you got to be mindful that even though you have a small audience, people are reading and watching you. And all it takes is one person to get a client. It doesn't take 1,000. So my first step would be, and this is an exercise I have done with my clients. I've had clients who tell me, I have such a small audience and I really feel like my client is not there. I'm like, are you sure about that? And I go to their account and they have like 2,500 followers. I'm like, how can you in all certainty tell me that your client is not among those 2,500? Why do you think you need to grow it in order to find that person? The person is already there. And the good news is that they have been following you for a while already. They have been fed your posts already. So it's less about, okay, volume. I just need to get more people. I can't keep going at this with 7 people. I need to feel like I'm being seen by 10,000 to know that this is worthwhile. We stop that thinking and we ask, who are those 7 people? And let's start talking to them. So if I can see who those 7 people are, I can check their profiles, right? And I can see, wow, that person actually looks like my ideal client. So I'm going to say that point, because I feel like I'm going to start bleeding into like more teachings, but like point number 1, let's just say point number 1 is your ideal client may already be in your audience. And when you're trying to focus on growing your audience rather than pulling them out, right? You're ignoring the fact that the universe has already given you the client and you gotta start finding them. So step 1, realize that your ideal client may already be somebody that you already know.
So I've got a question. So not a question as much as a statement. What I love about what you just said, and it should make sense to a lot of people. I think a lot of people post and then they look, all right, how many likes did I get? How many people commented? And they might even look at who commented. But it's almost as if they expect the people following or commenting to keep driving the conversation. And you said something very important in that last little bit there. You said, pay attention to who it is. And if you can identify one that looks like your ideal client, start talking to them. In other words, don't just sit there and say, thank you. Thank you for thank you for that comment with, right. Hey, thank you. All right. Or, hey, right on with our emojis and different stuff. Yeah. or different emojis and things like that. You're saying keep the conversation going, especially with the key people, and start establishing that relationship. And most people don't, it's almost like they expect their followers to do all that work for them.
Right. And that's just not the way to monetize a small audience. Like, sorry. So what did we say point 1 was? Know who those people are, right? Yep. Know that your ideal client could be somebody that you already know. That's like the key to monetization of a small audience is be aware that your next client is possibly somebody that you already know, not a stranger off the street. So, which brings us to point number 2, which I think is the conversations piece. Because I hear this all the time. It's like, Ina, okay, that all sounds fine and good, but my audience is not engaging with me. right?
Yeah.
Ina, my audience is not engaging. So how am I supposed to follow a conversation if I'm not even getting any comments? If you have a small audience, you have the ability to do something that somebody with a large audience can't do. And that is to actually look through your followers.
Yeah.
To post stories on Instagram and see who's watching your stories, to see who's liking your posts recurringly, right? Who is actually there? Who is paying attention? Who is opening your emails? You may have a small audience, but those numbers are rarely zero, right? 0 people listening to your stories, 0 people liking your posts, 0 people opening your emails. That is a rarely zero number. So I would be making a list of those people who are paying attention. And I would be reaching out just to say hello. Hey, how's it going? Thank you for being on my list, right? Like,
Yeah.
how long have you been on my list for? How did we get connected? That's a great question to start, by the way. It's like, hey, how did you find me? How did we find each other? How did we get here? And just start, right? Part of this is having a litmus test for knowing who is a potential ideal client or not. And this is something that you can do when you go through who is my ideal client avatar, right? Like you can have rules for when you look at somebody's profile and say, yeah, this is somebody that I would like to engage with. I don't do this type of engagement, this type of conversation with everybody. My inbox on Instagram gets flooded with people pitching me and with people saying, how long have you been a coach? Typical question of somebody who's like out there doing engagement. I'm like, not interested. But I'm interested in the people who are actually following me. And see, if we've never had a conversation before, why not? Let's talk. Let's have a coffee chat, right? So I'd say that point number 2 is going to be, don't be afraid to be the one starting conversations. And when you started saying, some people are counting their likes, counting their comments, counting their shares, that is not how I define engagement. Yeah. The way that I define engagement is how many conversations I'm having, not how many likes I am getting. So start measuring that instead. So that's point number 2.
And I think that the way you just phrased it is so perfectly said. You know, how many conversations am I having? And the fact that you are measuring engagement differently than most. Perfect. All right, let's hear the next one.
And point number 3 is, okay, let's say that somebody's out there listening to this and like, okay, Ina, I get you. I already know who my ideal client is. Okay, my ideal client is in my small audience. Great, I got it. Number 2, I'm not going to be afraid to start conversations with them. Okay, great, I got that. But how do I go from a conversation to a sale? Like, that's the next question. It's like, okay, so I'm having all these great conversations with people. We are clicking, we are connecting. We have the same breed of dog, right? They went to Disneyland and I told them I was there last week. And now we're like giving each other tips on how to keep our kids busy. How do I transition to a sale, right? That's the biggest question. So point number 3 is you don't. Hear me out. When you're establishing an honest relationship with someone, a genuine relationship with someone, people can sense when you have a hidden agenda. I can sense it. I can feel it. I can see it coming from a mile away with your line of questioning. And you know what? I don't have time to subject myself to your sales script. So I'm just not going to continue those conversations. I actually stop myself from giving people advice when they put me through that, sales conversation on the DMs. I stop myself from just giving them advice. Like, does this work with anybody? Because you're boring me. Like, I'm going to go. So you don't do that. You don't have a hidden agenda. You don't think to yourself, this is a potential client. How do I sign them? And if I don't sign them, then I'm doing something wrong. You really got to let go. You got to realize that this connection is going to pay off because you guys connect. So this is how you turn that, how you turn the numbers in your favor, right? Because I'm not here suggesting everybody should just go and make friends online and that's it. Things will work out. Cross your fingers. That's not what I'm saying. The strategy is to have content and engagement working for you at the same time. You don't get clients with pure engagement, with pure DM conversations about Disneyland and your dog. And you don't just have great sales with just pure sales content. And by content, I mean posts on Instagram that say, hey, I'm teaching a masterclass, or I am selling this program, or did you know that, right? So we need both working at the same time. Because if I'm talking to you, Scott, and I can sense that you don't have a hidden agenda, I can sense that you're just like sending me pictures of your kids. And you're like, look, my kids are the same age as yours. And look, this is awesome. Oh, you lived in Louisville? Where? Look at where I am right now. I am at the Kentucky Derby, right? I know that I'm establishing a connection with you, Scott, a connection with somebody that, oh my God, I actually like him. Yeah. I like it that he went to Derby and he thought of me because I lived in Louisville for a little bit, right? Like, that is so nice that just purely by the fact that we're connecting over the DMs, Instagram is going to think to itself, right? Instagram thinking, wow, Scott and Ina are friends. So maybe Ina is interested in what Scott is posting. So as soon as I get out of a DM conversation, most of the time, the first post I see is the post from that person that I just talked to. Mm-hmm. And if Scott has his machine tuned in to somebody like me, if there's going to be a training there, it's going to be like, hey, I'm teaching a new webinar on bourbon and cigars and how I turned that into an amazing business, right? Yeah. And I'm going to be like, oh, wow, Scott is doing a training and he's teaching about business. I think, let me check his profile. Wow, I think I would want to learn a little bit more about that. Maybe I won't sign up right now because I saw it and I forget about it. But if I continue my conversations with Scott and I continue to see his posts and I am truly his ideal client, one day I'm going to be like, oh, what the heck, I'm just going to go to this training. Or I'm going to ask him about it because I don't have to go to any stinking training. I have him right here in my DMs.
That's right.
I can be like, Scott, I just saw your post about that training, but I really can't make it. I was wondering if you could just tell me what it's about. And Scott can go, why don't we get on a Zoom conversation? I'll walk you through the entire thing myself.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. And that is how content and engagement lead to sales. So that is point number 3.
I love that. You led on that with something I have said before as it relates to networking and relationship building. Mm-hmm. So, I used to be so bad at that early in my career. I was so focused on myself and so immature in the sense that, myself or the business, right? And so we thought we could do everything ourselves, didn't worry about strategic alliances with other companies, didn't worry about where that could take me, and thought we're competing against everybody and we're crushing everybody, right? Move, right. Crush, count, the old podcast, right? So, yeah. So if I'm rating myself, I think I'm a phenomenal networker and relationship builder now. And
I think so.
Well, but
I can vouch for that. I can totally vouch for that.
But it's not by effort. And so it's actually kind of what you're saying. Once it was really just about helping people and connecting people. So my whole role now is I'm a connector. I unite people. So, if I know that, hey, Ina can help my friend over here, someone else in my network, I am doing that introduction. I don't need mailbox money. I don't need anything from that. I get great joy in making that connection and watching something great happen. I love watching what happens because of the relationship. Yeah. And so I just feel like now when I'm at an event or I'm talking with people I don't know and something comes up where I'm like, oh, I know someone I need to introduce you to. It excites me. And I just come of it from that place. And the universe rewards me in this weird way. It's like the more I give like that, the more that just comes my way. But I think the key is not doing it because I know the universe will come back my way, right? It's truly like, I don't care if anything comes back. So when you were saying that, it really hit home with me because I've experienced that. And I think you're spot on there. So let me ask you this question. So I love those 3 tips. Beautiful. When we transcribe and put out the bullets for the show, we got to make sure that we highlight those 3 things. So But here's the thing. You mentioned talking about content that's showing a more personal side, but at the same time, you're putting out the business content. So there's this nice balance.
Yeah.
Share some techniques. Let's talk specifically about some of the business content for a second. How are you raising? Because if you and I have this relationship and we are constantly, DMing each other and communicating behind the scenes, what content would you put out there that you feel like, if I'm your ideal client, would raise the perceived value to where I'm like, wow, I need to check. I need to take this a little step further and reach out to Ina about this because I need to know more.
Right. So it's really important that you know who your ideal client is. And this is going to sound so basic, but it really goes back to basics. If I want to attract Scott and we're here in a DM conversation, my content has to attract Scott and what he needs right now. So there is a balance in terms of personal content and business content, but really everything is business content, right? Yeah. I share on my stories about taking my kids out. I'm not just doing that because I'm a personal blogger. I am doing it so that my clients can see, listen, I am not somebody like without kids who works 100 hours a week on my business. And I show them like, no, I have a life. And with two boys, ages 12 and 6, I have a busy life. Like any day.
I was going to say, you don't have a life. Because with two boys, you have no life. You have a busy life. You can say that.
I have a busy life, right?
Yeah.
I need to show them that, listen, I have a successful business, even though I am doing these things that to you may sound like obstacles, right? That to you may be using as excuses. Well, but I have too many kids. Well, but my schedule is unpredictable. Hello, I can wake up any day and one of my kids could be sick and there went all of the meetings that I had planned for that day, right? So I feel it and live it. So personal stuff that you share, you got to remember this is your business account. You're not just doing it to show the fun side of you, which is still fun, right? It's to show people that you're not a machine. You're not just a business, right? You're here to serve, and people like to work with people they like. So everything is really business content. So going back to your question, like strategically, what kind of content should I be doing? You want to have an invitation all the time. Like you want to be directing people to dive deeper with you, right? This is just a regular marketing funnel, right? Where you have your cold leads at the top. And by the way, leads that come from Facebook ads, completely different than leads that came organically. You would engage them differently. You need to nurture them differently, right? You need to keep in mind the fact that people who come cold, they're not going to show up to the masterclass. They're not going to show up to anything. They're not going to actually take action because they just heard about you yesterday and they could care less. So you have a completely different strategy for cold audiences versus organic audiences. But you got to keep all that in mind. So if you're thinking of the top of the funnel, which is your cold audience, you got to get them warmer and warmer. So what does that mean? Use stories to warm up an existing audience, right? Stories are not for audience growth. They're for audience nurturing. So a lot of people do a lot of sales on stories because you're here watching what that person is doing right now and just taking advantage of the call to action right there. So don't disregard stories. If I go to somebody's account and I see that they don't have any stories posted, it's like there's no one home.
Yeah.
It's like I'm in front of their house and I'm ready to knock on the door and I don't see any lights on. That's what that means to me.
Yeah.
So the kind of content you want to be putting out is invitations to what? A webinar, a live event. I've done this. An invitation to check out your stories, right? Always be inviting people to go deeper with you. Something that is really big right now that is working for a lot of people is to use a certain word that people can reply to dive deeper. And that kind of tells you who the leads are. You'll see this in many reels right now is you watch a reel, which is entertaining. You start reading the caption. And at the end of the caption, it tells you, if you type the word success, I will send you XYZ. And then people have many chat hooked up to it to give them what they need in the DMs and everything. And that works for you to know who is paying attention and who actually wants that. And those are your leads. Don't leave things to an automated funnel to take care of it. This is just how you pay attention to see who is raising their hands with your content. So anything that can get people to raise their hands and go deeper with you, that's the kind of stuff you want to be posting.
How important is consistency? So you touched on it a little bit with the stories, saying nobody home type stuff. But so how important is that? And what does consistency look like?
Anybody will tell you that consistency just means whatever you can do without burning out. So for some people, that's 3 reels a day. For some people, that's 3 reels a week. For some people, is 1 reel a week. For some people, that's 3 face posts per week, right? It's whatever you can do without burning out. I've been playing with this because if I create a ton of content, my next question is, should I space it out? Or should I just put it all out in the same week? Because Instagram likes abundance too, right? If you really want to go the distance with Instagram, the more content, the better. No limit, just like post everything all the time. But that is just not sustainable for a lot of people, for most people. So consistency is whatever you can do without burning out. Figure out what that is and do it. The great thing is that there are easy ways to do this, and reels are not easy, right? So if you're thinking reels, right? Reels is like the hardest type of content you can create in terms of effort, creativity, and time consuming, right? So what you want to do is to have some posts right in your back pocket that are really easy to create, right? Like you will see those. When you see them, make note of like, were they impactful? Did you like them? Like just text posts. I could have a post that says, your next client is someone you already know. And that is the key to monetizing a small audience. The end. That's a post right there. I just made it up.
Repeat that, because I thought that was a great, that's a great, I guess, headline or whatever we want to call it. Say it again. Can you say it again? Do you remember it?
I think so. I think so. Your next client is someone that you already know. And that is the key to monetizing your small audience. So you take that, you put it in a template, and you just put it out there. What else? I've actually done this challenge with my clients. I tell them, write down 10, I'm going to give you 10 minutes to write down 10 things that your ideal client needs to know right now, that you want to grab them by the shoulders and shake them and tell them like, this is something you need to know. Give me 10, drop and give me 10. And they can do it. In 10 minutes, they can give me 10 phrases. I'm like, great. If you post 2 of those per week, that's how many weeks you have created content for. 5 weeks?
Yeah.
Right? So it can be easy. So if you're struggling with consistency, find easy posts. I have an entire boot camp training just on this. It's just content types that you can use so you can create the next 30 days in 2 hours. Make it easy for yourself. Save yourself the work and you'll be consistent and you'll be fine.
So you said you measure engagement differently than everybody else, and you touched on how many actual conversations you're having. So let's talk about actual metrics that you might be looking at. So like what are you could sit there and say conversations, and I agree with it. I love it. But the question is, how are you measuring that? Like, what's the easy way? What's the easiest way? Nothing's easy. What's the easiest way? And what should entrepreneurs or C-suite, whoever this rings true, whoever watching this episode and saying, this is important to me, what are the metrics they need to be looking at to measure their effectiveness?
This is going to sound super haphazard because I used to keep a spreadsheet. I don't anymore. Things became too hard, right? Too hard and too measured and too time consuming. So the way that I measure it is, are my DMs lighting up? When I open the app, do I have DMs of conversations that I'm keeping up?
To be clear, you're saying of conversation, not just the spam bots and all the others. Yeah, you're talking about real convos. People real conversation with people. I'm going to give you a great example. Somebody reached out to me totally out of the blue, right? She said, hi, I just saw one of your posts. I don't know if you remember the story. I wish I could find exactly what her first message was. This is just going to give you a great example for you and for the audience on how to do this right. Okay. And I'm going to tell you what happened with this person. Okay.
No, they didn't sign up as a client. So this is not necessarily a client story because they reached out to me. This is how it went. I posted a picture of the eclipse on my stories, right? The eclipse that we got to see up in the Northeast, most of the US. And I posted a picture of the eclipse. This person just replied to that story saying, hey, I'm over in the UK. I feel like we totally missed out on this. That's what she said. That was the first message that she sent me. It wasn't, hi, I love your content.
Right.
It wasn't, hi, how long have you been a coach? It wasn't, hi, it was literally seeing something in my account that she liked and reacting in a very genuine way to it. So, you know what? With people who reach out to me that way, that I don't see a hidden agenda, right? That I don't see that I'm inside a sales script, I continue those conversations. So I sent her back an email and I sent her back a message with a little map saying like, oh, it looks like the UK is going to have an eclipse in 2044 or whatever. So you might want to go check it out.
Did you follow it up with a question? How old are you?
No.
Because she can't be too old.
Well, you can see their picture. You can see their picture. So I followed up. I'm like, hey, just keep an eye out on this one in 2026. Looks like it's going to go like right by the UK. And she followed up with a voice note. And her voice was the sweetest voice in the world. And she's like, hi, this is so nice. Thank you so much. I'm definitely going to keep an eye on it. So, I've been following your account. Like, what is up? What are you up to? And I replied with a voice note. And she replied with a voice note. So you know what we did? We've been talking for a couple of weeks, just catching up. She literally would send me messages, be like, hey, how are you today? Like, what's going on? We just started talking. And then I'm like, hey, let's do something together. I would love to meet you. And we did an Instagram live last week. So what is going to happen out of that connection? I don't know. Maybe she will turn into a client next year. Maybe I will turn into her client. The point is creating meaningful relationships and keeping an open mind for what could happen. Like you just never know. I actually did this. This is one that actually turned into my best client story. And this is how we met. I was interviewing someone for their podcast, right? She was on my podcast. She really liked my interview style. So she said, can you interview me on my podcast? Because it's like the beginning of the season and maybe you have something interesting that you can pull out of me. And I'm like, sure. So I decided to do something special. I reached out to people in her audience. Like I scoured her Instagram and found people who were saying, oh, I'm in her program and I love it, right? People who look like clients. And I reached out to maybe like 10 people and many of them didn't respond. One of them, I'm like, hey, I'm doing something special for this entrepreneur. It sounds like you worked with her. Can you just send me a video of you saying something nice to her and asking her a question for her podcast? So she did. That person and I became best friends. We have been working together in a working coaching capacity for 2 years. And I just helped her create her very first TEDx talk, which went live 2 weeks ago. So I'm like in awe. I've never written a TEDx talk before. And now my words are on the TEDx stage, right? So you never know. All you have to do is keep your mind open. Not everybody is a lead as a client. Not everybody is going to do something for you. You just got to keep an open mind to establish relationships. So going back to measurements, I need to know that I have conversations going in my DMs all the time.
You're keeping it simple. You're looking at one measurement.
That's it.
Am I having conversations in my DMs and are they real conversations, right? When you're describing the look and feel of these convos, I go back to when this app was popular. It's lost its way a little bit, Clubhouse.
Yeah.
So I did very well.
Have you been using it? Because after it went live, I never touched it again.
I'm done with it now, only because from a time standpoint, and it's changed. It's no longer. There was something. It's become very. The last couple of times I popped in, it's like it's not the same to me. I don't want to I'm not going to sit here because some of my strongest connections that I have to this day came and originated from Clubhouse. And so I thought to myself, why, as you're talking, I'm thinking to myself, why? Well, you're both on stage, you're helping each other. No one wants anything from the other. And then what happens is the conversations just kept going, whether in DM, behind the scenes, after the fact. But man, 3 or 4 conversations come to relationships, people in my network now that are very, have a lot of influence with me and hopefully vice versa. But at the same time, we've created some really cool things together.
Yeah.
But it's because it started and all it was conversations.
Right.
That really had nothing about their business or mine, and eventually evolved into that, not forced by either of us. And so I think that was some of the magic that came from that app initially. And now it's just become, it's very much marketing, and it's like a lot of, it's like a lot of things that
I had completely forgotten about them. I should go check it out again, see what they're up to.
Yeah.
But you're hitting the nail on the head. Is throwing away the hidden agenda, is not thinking that every conversation has to bear fruit, right? You really gotta, in order to come off, to be genuine on DMs, you gotta be genuine on DMs. You gotta be authentic, and you gotta come from a place of wanting to network and connect and to look for win-win scenarios. I have my MBA, and one of the best classes that I took was negotiations. And I learned that a negotiation is a win-win strategy. It's not trying to squeeze the other person. It's not trying to get something out of this relationship. Is how do we find ways to win-win? And I'm constantly, whoever I'm talking to on DMs, I'm constantly thinking, how do we help each other out here?
This is exactly what I try to tell people in my fantasy football league when I'm trying to make a trade with them. I'm like, this is
don't they get it?
This is a win-win. And and they're so worried about how it's going to impact my team for the better. And I'm like, I try to say this, but I have to say I'm much more trusted in my business network and relationship building than my fantasy football league. I'm not as trusted there.
Right. Oh, that's a shame. They should wise up.
I agree.
They should know better.
All right. So let me ask you. So we've got people either watching or listening to us, and now they want to connect with you. And by the way, you've heard the way that Ina likes to be connected with. So DM her.
Totally.
But don't come at her with sales pitches. Do not come at her with sales pitches.
Don't put me through your sales script. Just don't do it.
So how can they find out more about your work and get in touch with you?
Sure. So the first place is my Instagram account, and I'm always on stories, so you can see like what I'm doing, what I'm putting out there, what trainings I'm doing. You can always look at the link in my bio. That is the next thing that I'm doing. And if you are listening on the podcast right now, I do have a podcast. It's called Get Clients First, and it is marketing strategies for online entrepreneurs. And we are about to go through an amazing rebrand shift. So go and follow the podcast right now, and you will see it come up with a new brand. If you get into my mailing list, you'll actually get a notification. If you're following me on Instagram, you'll get to see what that new brand is and why we're doing it and how we're changing things. So that's going to get really exciting on the podcast front. But there is over 260 episodes of pure gold, not just interviews, but me teaching about this and getting really, really specific on how to get clients with a small audience.
So just so you all know out there, I follow Ina, and she is not this. Her content's good. It's valuable. You're going to learn something from literally almost every single thing she does. But I love what you just said with the podcast. Follow her, because I have to tell you, as my former life, I was a marketer. Once a marketer, always a marketer, probably. But what
I'm here thinking, I think we all have a marketer inside of us.
So in my former life, with the agency J&L Marketing, I would enter into people's programs and or follow them, or give my email up, because I wanted to watch the funnel work. And so here, people are going to have a real live pivot if they follow your show now, to watch exactly how you manage this pivot to the new show. To me,
I'm gonna
that's some of
tell
the
you,
best learning. That's like a free workshop.
that is my favorite way to learn, is to watch what other entrepreneurs are doing and how they're doing it. So
Yeah.
come and watch. I don't think I said how people can follow me on Instagram. My name is Ina Coveney, but you have to spell Coveney right. It ends in EY. People forget the EY, but I'm the only Ina Coveney on Instagram. You should be able to just look me up and find it. But yeah, I learn from what I do, not just what I say.
I think building social authority with a small audience, probably you're in a niche that is unique in itself, because I think the majority of people are like, grow your audience, grow your audience, grow your audience. Here's how you can get more followers. Here's how you can get more followers. Yours is more impactful in the areas that entrepreneurs and businesses want most, because it impacts the bottom line. So, to me, I love what you're doing. I love the content you're putting out. That I follow you for a reason.
Thank
I'm
you.
also part of one of your Instagram groups. So you've got groups. Or maybe that's on Facebook. So it's on.
I have
I
a
follow
Facebook
you on
group.
almost all your channels.
Yeah,
So
everywhere. That is so nice, Scott.
so you put out a lot of good stuff, and you offer a lot of opportunity to learn. So thank you for being a guest on this show and helping our audience as well. Remember,
Thank you.
everyone out there, subscribe to Business Bourbon and Cigars as well. Not only get clients first, also subscribe to Business Bourbon and Cigars for more inspiring conversations with industry experts like Ina. Don't forget to leave us a review, rate us on your favorite podcast platform. Until next time, cheers to your success. Thank you, everyone.